Welcome to ARIRANG News. It's 4 p.m. on Tuesday, September 30th. Here in Korea, live from Seoul, I'm Hyun-kyung. Over at the National Assembly, a plenary session was scheduled to resume about 2 hours ago, but the Assembly Speaker has decided to postpone it. That's because negotiations between the main rival parties have been ongoing all day as they try to come to a resolution on the political standoff over the so-called special ferry bill. For the details, we connect to our Ji Myung-kil standing by at the National Assembly. So Myung-kil, what have you learned so far?
Hello, Hyun-kyung. Assembly Speaker Chung Ui-hwa said just about 2 hours ago that he had received a request from the main opposition party asking that the plenary session be postponed. Chung decided to honor that request. The main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is currently holding a meeting on whether they will attend today's plenary session once it is convened. They have been boycotting parliamentary proceedings, upset about the lack of progress on a special bill that would set up an investigation into April's ferry disaster. The Assembly Speaker has delayed the session, but he has said that the ruling party will convene regardless of whether the opposition party is present. When they do, they will get right to work on passing some 90 draft bills. Chung remarks this afternoon thanked the ruling party's lawmakers for their patience and also asked that they not venture far from the National Assembly. Some asked how long they have to wait before the session opened. Chung told them it could come at any time, even late into the evening.
So we'll have to wait and see if the meeting will indeed convene. Now, before that development, there was a trilateral meeting this morning between the rival parties and the families of ferry disaster victims. Anything worth mentioning from those talks?
Yes, Hyun-kyung, the full leaders of the rival parties and representatives of victims' families met to discuss the special Seoul ferry bill. The family representative refused to elaborate on the specifics of what they requested during those talks, but it is believed they gave main opposition party full leader Park Young-san the authority to negotiate with the ruling party of the newly revised bill. The request, from what we're hearing, is that when a state prosecutor is picked to head the fact-finding committee in charge of investigating the ferry disaster, the bereaved families want a say in who that person will be. Originally, the families had asked that the fact-finding committee be given prosecutorial powers, but it seems they've now backed out from that request. We're also hearing that one of the representatives for the student victims' families of the Seoul ferry accident asked that the trilateral meeting be expanded to include a representative that would speak on behalf of the victims who did not come from the Tanon High School. No word on whether that request was accepted. I will be back throughout the evening with more updates. This is Ji Myung-kil reporting live from the National Assembly.
All right, thank you, Myung-kil. We do appreciate your report, and he will, of course, join us again on our later newscast for more developments. Now, while that political gridlock continues at the National Assembly, there were fresh concerns about another ferry accident earlier in the day. A ferry ran aground in waters off Korea's southwestern island this Tuesday morning. The 104 passengers and 5 crew members that were aboard the ship were rescued safely, though. It reportedly struck a rock in waters near Hongdo Island in Jeollanam-do province at around 9 a.m. The Coast Guard said everyone was evacuated from the ferry in 20 minutes and that they were taken to a nearby port on the island. And moving on, the United States has declined to comment on rumors of a military coup in North Korea. Speaking to reporters following Monday's press briefing, State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki said she has seen the reports but could neither confirm or deny them. It's been nearly a month since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was seen in public spreading wild rumors about his whereabouts. One of those rumors is that Kim has been arrested following a coup. Another is that the young leader has been hospitalized after undergoing surgery on his leg. Recent video footage released by the North showed the young leader walking with a limp. And a new report shows that political instability in North Korea worsened in the year 2013. The World Bank's latest edition of its worldwide governance indicators says North Korea is among the nations in worst shape when it comes to political stability and absence of violence. The index saw a significant drop for the first time since 2010. Watchers say political variables such as the execution of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's uncle Jang Song-taek contributed to the drop. Addressing the many human rights issues in Asia, including Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women, Korea's top judge has stressed the need to set up a human rights court in Asia. Chief Justice Park Han-cheol explained his vision to hundreds of judges from around the world that have gathered in Seoul. Kim Min-ji reports.
Around 350 people from some 100 countries have gathered in Seoul to attend the Congress of the World Conference on Constitutional Justice. Hosted by the Constitutional Court of Korea, the event is being held under the theme Constitutional Justice and Social Integration.
We need to pursue international standards and ensure universal human rights. We also need to think about the effects that ruling may have on international relations.
In a keynote address, Chief Justice Park Han-cheol proposed the establishment of a special court in Asia that would deal with human rights issues. Indirectly referring to Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women, he stressed the need for a regional court, saying that Asia had bore witness to human rights violation during times of war and that their sufferings continue to this day. Park noted the European Court of Human Rights as a potential model. He said the court brought integration and regional peace to the European Union. The court, which is comprised of 47 member states, was set up in 1959 by the European Convention on Human Rights. Park said when the Asian court is set up, it will bring about regional integration and give people more dignity. The 4-day conference will end on Wednesday with participants adopting a Seoul communique on the issues they discussed. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Bringing you the fresh updates from stories breaking in Korea and abroad. We give you a bigger and better picture of the world. Join Hyun-kyung live from Seoul. Every weekday, only on ARIRANG.
The sudden eruption of Mount Ontake in Japan over the weekend is a not-so-subtle reminder to people that the island nation has more than 100 live volcanoes. Mount Ontake is getting people worried that the country's biggest mountain, Mount Fuji, may be ready to blow for the first time in hundreds of years. Our Son Jung-in tells us more.
Mount Fuji is the highest point on the Japanese archipelago, rising 700 meters taller than Mount Ontake. Located not far from major cities like Tokyo and Yokohama, the mountain has recently been showing some signs that an eruption may be coming, including sinking roads and receding lake waters in the area. Mount Fuji has discharged lava at least 43 times in the past 2,000 years. It erupts on average every 50 years, but has stayed ominously silent for the last 300. A recent research found that the 9.0 magnitude earthquake in Japan's east in 2011 increased the pressure beneath the volcanic mountain. If Mount Fuji were to erupt, experts warn of extensive damage. It could spell disaster for Shizuoka Prefecture, with more than 750,000 residents left homeless. The harmful ash discharge could also damage the health of 12 million people residing in Tokyo and other metropolitan areas within the volcano's reach. Another problem lies in the evacuation system, or lack thereof. According to a government study, 80% of areas threatened by the effects of a volcanic eruption have no viable evacuation plan. With thousands of hikers visiting Mount Fuji every day, concerns are rising that Japan should start preparing now before it's too late. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, over in Hong Kong, thousands of pro-democracy activists are not budging, still blocking major parts of the city. They are demanding universal suffrage, and reports coming out of Hong Kong say much of the city is shut down today as well. Our Connie Kim has more.
Hong Kong's leader called on protesters to immediately end their rallies as thousands occupy major streets in defiance of authorities' calls to go home. C.Y. Leung, the country's chief executive, urged demonstrators to clear out from the roads, saying it could hinder emergency vehicles from passing through. Tuesday's protests have been relatively calm following the police crackdown Sunday, in which police used pepper spray and tear gas on the protesters. Schools and businesses around the government complex remain closed as thousands block the commercial district of Causeway Bay to Central's east and across the harbor to Kowloon's Mongkok. Over 50 people have been injured since the protests flared up on Saturday. Demonstrators are demanding universal suffrage in Hong Kong's 2017 elections and that Beijing abandon its plan to vet candidates for the post of chief executive.
We have a simple message, is that we just want a democracy and a fair voting of choosing our chief executive of Hong Kong.
Up until now, Beijing had been nominating the chief executive, and China was quick to warn other nations against supporting what it calls illegal rallies.
We hope that related nations show a considerate stance regarding the protest in Hong Kong and do not send out a wrong message to protesters.
However, the U.S. and Britain have both said the demonstrators' rights should be protected and the people of Hong Kong should be granted universal suffrage. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And now on to the Syrian-Turkey border, where residents of the Syrian city of Kobani say they are terrified as Islamic State militants continue to make gains toward them. The London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the jihadist group was as close as 3 kilometers away from the mostly Kurdish city. If they are successful, IS would gain a full stretch of land from the Turkish border to the group's declared capital of Raqqa, some 100 kilometers away. Eyewitnesses said the U.S.-led coalition airstrikes were too few and too far back from the front lines. Meanwhile, a U.S. think tank released analysis on Monday estimating that American military efforts against IS could cost at least $2.4 billion per year. To many tech companies around the world, the Korean smartphone market is known to be a hard nut to crack, mostly because of Samsung's presence and its unique mobile telecommunications structure. But those factors are apparently not stopping foreign manufacturers, including China's Huawei, from trying to break into Korea's smartphone market. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
Those in Korea trying to buy a new smartphone now have one more option. That is the X3 model from Chinese budget smartphone manufacturer Huawei Technologies, which hit local shelves on Tuesday. Huawei expects to lure Korean consumers with its affordably priced handsets, which are up to $400 cheaper than local brands like Samsung Electronics. Korea's smartphone market is considered difficult to break into, with most citizens loyal to Samsung and its domestic rival. Currently, the Korean tech giant controls around 60% of the local market, followed by LG Electronics. Apple, one of the world's most popular smartphone makers, holds below 10% of the local share. It's no surprise then that US-based Motorola gave up on the Korean market in 2012, while Taiwan's HTC also folded its Korean business in the same year. But it's not just Huawei that's aiming to take on the Korean smartphone market. Sony of Japan recently unveiled its high-end Xperia Z3 smartphone, which also boasts a cheaper price tag compared to local brands, pointing to even stiffer competition among local and foreign players. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
In other economic news, whether it be the government's recent expansionary policies or better economic conditions in advanced countries, business sentiment is improving in the nation. But some say it's still too early to say the economy is back on track toward full recovery. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
More companies are feeling positive about the Korean economy, largely due to the government's expansionary policies and signs of recovery in the United States. A survey of 600 companies by the Federation of Korean Industries shows that the Business Survey Index for October exceeded the 100 mark for the first time in 5 months. A figure over 100 means that the optimists outnumber pessimists over economic conditions. The positive sentiment was also shared in the manufacturing sector. The Bank of Korea says its Business Survey Index of manufacturing companies edged up to 74 in September. That's 2 points higher than the previous month, when the level was its lowest in 13 months. But the country's industrial output was disappointing. In August, it dropped by 0.6% from the previous month, switching to negative growth for the first time in 3 months. Statistics Korea attributes this to the drop in the number of working days due to summer vacations and a growing number of labor strikes in the automobile sector. And adds that it's too early to say that the Korean economy is on the steady path to recovery. The Federation of Korean Industries points to hurdles, namely the strengthening of the Korean won, the weakening Japanese yen, lackluster private consumption, and a slump in exports to China. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
The nation's tourism revenue has hit more than $1.5 billion last month. This, according to the Bank of Korea and the Korea Culture and Tourism Institute. That's up 50% on year and is the second highest monthly total ever, following only July of this year. The record numbers coincide with a record number of Chinese tourists coming to Korea. 4 million Chinese visited the country in the January to August period, up nearly 40% compared to the same period last year. In August, Chinese tourists made up more than half of all foreign visitors to Korea. Switching gears to some arts news, if you ask foreigners visiting Korea what they find beautiful, one of the things that never fails to come up is Korea's porcelain work. The National Museum of Korea has opened a new exhibition centered around just that, and our Im Hyun-hee has a closer look.
A beautiful blue dragon, sprawled across the body of a delicate white porcelain jar. During the Joseon Dynasty, porcelain work saw many transformations, including the use of cobalt blue glaze laid against the pure white, resulting in these blue and white porcelain works, also known as Chunghwa porcelain.
This exhibition features Joseon Dynasty celadon and porcelain, highlighting its value to Korea's history. Now more can discover the beauty of Korean Chunghwa porcelain.
It's a centuries-old technique that was seen across the Asian continent, but Korea developed a style of its own. One of the most valuable works on display is a Chunghwa porcelain lidded jar with a plum and bamboo design. The national treasure shows the Korean artist's unique use of the pure empty space, creating more simplistic masterpiece right on the surface of the jar. But what makes these works so valuable is that the cobalt blue had to be imported from Islamic countries, so access to the craft was extremely rare. Only the country's best craftsmen were given the opportunity to use the blue coloring, making it all the more popular with the royalty and the wealthy.
During the mid to late 18th century, Chunghwa porcelain was enjoyed by the aristocrat class, characterized by the simplistic paintings of the four gracious plants, landscapes, animals, and patterns.
The era of elegant Chunghwa porcelain was short-lived, as Korea endured the Japanese invasion. But each graceful brushstroke preserved on these porcelain jars is a priceless piece of Korea's history. Im Hyun-hee, ARIRANG News.
And we have 4 more days to go in the Incheon Asian Games. For the latest, we turn to our sports guru, Song Ji-sun, at the News Center. So, Ji-sun, there were high expectations that Park Tae-hwan would be the first Korean athlete to win 3 gold medals at this year's Asian Games. We all know that he didn't make it, but someone else did today.
That was right, and it was a female athlete, the 28-year-old bowler Lee Na-young, who became the host country's first triple gold medalist at the ASIAD after winning all events in her discipline this afternoon. He scored 5,132 points to beat Malaysia's Sin Lee Jane by nearly 40 points. That's an average of 213 points per game out of a perfect 300. The individual winner is determined after adding a score from the individual, duo, triple, and team in 5 events. She also added a bronze in the individual and a silver in team of 5 events to earn medals in all the events she entered in. With his victory, South Korea claimed the top spot in all events discipline for the 4th consecutive Asian Games, including this year. And on to some money talk. The South Korean government and the organizing committee of the Incheon Asian Games say they will help North Korea cover some of the expenses for taking part in this year's Games. The South has done so in the previous sporting events hosted here, and Seoul has decided to do it again. Officials say the South Korean government will give the Asian Games Organizing Committee up to $1 million. Pyongyang has yet to pay multiple fees, like its accommodation costs, for staying at the athletes' village and for transmitting video footage so that the events can be shown in the north. It's common practice for each participating country to pay their own expenses when taking part in international sporting events, but the Incheon 2014 Organizing Committee requested that the South Korean government help the North out. The government says it will transfer the money to the committee after the North indicates how much they're willing to contribute.
So hopefully things will work out for the best for both sides. Now, let's go back to talking about some more sports action. The Korean women's football team failed to advance to the final after losing to North Korea last night, but South Korea's men's football team still has a chance, yes?
They do, and if they do win this gold, it will be the first time since the 1986 Asian Games when it was hosted here in Seoul. And the 2 Koreas will play each other for the gold if they win their semi-final matches just tonight. North Korea plays Iraq at 5 p.m. Korea time, while South Korea kicks off against Thailand at 8 p.m. The final set for Thursday at 8 p.m. And some medal events are in store for some contact and action sports tonight as well. 4 medal events are set for wrestling in men's Greco-Roman and Taekwondo, which finally kicked off its competition with a round of 32 this morning. We got 4 gold medal matches, 2 for men and 2 for women. Now, usually the organizer of these sporting events put the most popular and the anticipated events and the finals in the final days of the Asian Games, so do stay tuned for the results throughout this Friday, which is the last day of competition.
All right, thank you very much, Ji-sun, for the updates as always, and she will join us again at 6 p.m. for early edition at 6. That was our Song Ji-sun at the News Center.
Hope your day is coming along well. Welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather updates. At the moment, the central regions are enjoying breezy and sunny conditions while sporadic showers continue to drop down south. Those on the eastern coast are looking at up to 20 millimeters of autumn rain, while down south it's approximately 5 millimeters. Yesterday's rain has cooled down the atmosphere, leading to some brisk air. Now, also, the big gap in temperatures will stick around for a while, so make sure to grab a jacket on your ways out. Other than that, another round of nationwide autumn rain, it's on its way this Thursday. Conditions over in Incheon look to be perfect for outdoor matches, including Team Korea's semi-final football match against Thailand later tonight. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings. Seoul is 23, Daegu 22, Busan 24. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon and Jeju make it to 24, Dokdo and Mangkeugang 15 and 9. That's your weather for now. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we leave you with the international weather.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time.